They were a band that only dropped one album, but that album nearly blew the biggest pop-punk band on the planet apart for good. For Tom Delonge, it was a vital artistic experiment, but for Mark Hoppus, it was a betrayal so deep, it would fester for years. So how did this one dark, ambitious album plant the seeds that would split Blink-182 at the absolute height of their fame? By February 2005, Blink-182 was without a doubt one of the biggest bands in the world. They were pop-punk royalty, cranking out hits, dominating the charts, and selling out arenas across the globe. But behind the scenes, a secret feud was tearing them to pieces. Then a press release suddenly announced an indefinite hiatus, shocking millions of fans. This wasn't just a break, it was a breakup, born from bitter arguments over the band's future. This is the story of how a single side project created by one member trying to find his voice ended up silencing the band that defined a generation. It's a story of three best friends torn apart and how the echoes of that fracture are still felt today. Because you guys requested it, let's talk about the history of Boxcar Racer. Before we get started with today's video, if you guys want to support my channel, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And I've been told from a lot of my subscribers that they find themselves unsubscribed from my channel, or they don't see my new videos pop up, so make sure you turn on all notifications. To really get the scale of the fallout, you have to remember just how colossal Blink-182 was at the turn of the millennium. The year is 2001. They were fresh off the world-conquering success of 1999's Enema of the State. The trio, guitarist Tom Delonge, bassist Mark Hoppus, and drummer Travis Barker, were just a band. They were a cultural phenomenon. Their videos were on constant loop on TRL, their faces were plastered on every major music magazine, and their perfect blend of pop hooks and punk energy had become the sound of a generation. They followed that up with 2001's Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, which shot straight to #1 on the Billboard 200 chart. It was a monster of an album that cemented their status as pop-punk kings, and it gave the fans and the label exactly what they wanted: more goofy, high-energy, and stupidly catchy anthems. The album gave us hits like The Rock Show and First Date, songs that perfectly nailed the band's fun-loving, juvenile delinquent vibe. But under the surface of all that success, a creative itch was starting to bug Tom Delonge. While Blink's signature sound was making them famous, Tom was starting to feel trapped by it. He was getting older, his musical tastes were changing, and he was getting pulled towards more darker and more atmospheric sounds of post-hardcore bands that he and Travis loved, like Fugazi, Quicksand, and Refused. In a 2016 documentary, Tom even admitted that he felt insecure, that musically there were cooler things they could be doing. I will say, around the time of promoting Boxcar Racer in 2002, Tom was singing a different tune, telling MTV, "Blink will never break up. We love what we do too much for anything ever to happen to Blink, and we are so blessed by the man upstairs to even have that in our lives. That's our passion." This is just part 2 of that. He admitted at the time that there was no real need for Boxcar Racer, and the band was simply started out of boredom. This split in creative vision became obvious during the writing sessions for Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. While Mark was aiming for a bigger, better Enema of the State, Tom was trying to pull the band in a totally different direction. He wanted to explore heavier guitar riffs, more complex song structures, and more serious lyrics. Now, we did see a glimpse of that new direction on the song Stay Together for the Kids. Mark told an interviewer at the time of the album's release, "There's always a song or two where we really try to push ourselves. On this new record, I think we've done a lot of different stuff that people wouldn't ever expect from us. On the new one, it's Stay Together for the Kids." Stay Together for the Kids was issued as a single from the album, and it peaked at #7 on the alternative rock chart. Despite a few songs like Stay Together for the Kids or Adam's Song, the band's whole image was largely built on dick jokes and chasing girls, and it just didn't feel like the artist that Tom wanted to be anymore. He later said that he felt bummed out and locked into Blink-182's formula, desperate for an outlet to do something different. The label pressures to just write more hits like All the Small Things only made things worse. In what was basically an act of defiant compliance, Mark wrote The Rock Show and Tom wrote First Date as a direct, almost sarcastic answer to the demand for more singles. And while both songs became massive hits, for Tom they were just another reminder of the box that he was in. He had ideas that were darker, moodier, and way more experimental. Ideas he knew could never fly as a Blink-182 song. He needed a new canvas, a place where he could paint with different colors without anyone telling him to stick to the formula. That need would soon give birth to the project that promised creative freedom but would end up costing him his band. The spark for Boxcar Racer lit up in the fall of 2001. A Blink-182 European tour was postponed after the 9/11 attacks, and then a rescheduled tour was canceled too after Tom messed up his back. Stuck at home in serious pain from a herniated disc, Tom started writing music that was way more darker than anything Blink had ever touched. This wasn't a hobby, it was therapy for him. He later said that he wanted to prove to himself that he could create something meaningful on his own without the crutch of his famous bandmates. He told MTV, when your back is killing you and you have to have surgery and all this stuff, it's kind of just hard to keep a focus on the happier times in your life. He added, you end up writing all these songs about feeling sad and confused. In a separate interview with the Salt Lake Tribune, he admitted that there's this misconception that all the guys in Blink-182 do is goof around, revealing that when he's home, he loves smoking weed, going to the bookstore, and reading books about politics, science, math, and conspiracy theories. Tom added, but I also spend a lot of time thinking the world is a small place and there's a lot of going on. As for the name Boxcar Racer, that came from a band Travis Barker was in after high school, and Tom just simply liked the name. Travis told MTV, it's not like Boxcar Racer, like a little fast speedy car. It was always meant to be 3 words, and it was just a name of something that means totally nothing. Tom told the Salt Lake Tribune, I was writing these songs about the end of the world and all this crazy stuff, and then, Revelations in the Bible speaks about the end of the world. And one day I was wondering if World War II was what Revelation spoke about. So I started looking it up, and the second bomb that was dropped on Japan was from a plane called Boxcar. Tom added, and it really kind of freaked me out. At that point, I didn't even want the name, but it was way too late. I blame Travis for that one. Boxcar Racer were soaked in the influence of post-hardcore bands that Tom and Travis worshipped. Tom really wanted heavy guitars, big dynamic shifts from quiet to loud, and lyrics that were more introspective and even political. This was all the stuff he couldn't do within Blink-182. This was the birth of Boxcar Racer. To bring his vision to life, he recruited his friend David Kennedy to handle the heavier guitar work, but he still needed a drummer. And this is where Tom made the fateful decision that would create a wound that would take years to heal. Instead of hiring some studio drummer, he asked Travis to join the project. Publicly, he said it was practical. Travis was the best drummer he knew and could lay down the tracks fast. Tom also later pointed out that he didn't want to pay for a studio drummer, and Travis was instrumental in the songwriting process, with Tom adding that some songs began simply from a drum part rather than a guitar riff. But by bringing in one member of Blink-182, Tom intentionally left the other one out. Tom made the call not to include Mark. Tom was afraid that if Mark was in the band, it would turn into Blink-182 2.0, which would defeat the whole point. For Mark, being excluded was a gut punch. It wasn't just about the music, it felt deeply personal. He started hearing whispers about Tom's new project from their crew and mutual friends before Tom ever said a word to him. The situation got worse when Tom brought in Blink's entire support system, their management, their label, and their producer Jerry Finn to work on the Boxcar Racer album. From the outside, it looked like Blink-182 just minus Mark Hoppus. Mark said that he was heartbroken, that it all felt so secretive. In a Reddit AMA, Mark summed up his feelings in 3 words, stating, weird, betrayed, jealous. The message he got was loud and clear. Tom felt held back, and Mark was the one holding him back. The bond that had been the entire foundation for Blink was now fractured. As Mark later put it didn't feel like we were best friends trying to conquer the world together anymore. Things got even uglier in a public interview. A fan called in and asked point blank why Mark wasn't in the new band, basically asking if he wasn't cool enough. The question hit a nerve. Mark went silent for the rest of the interview, absolutely seething. He later said that he was livid and just wanted to watch it all burn to the ground. Tom did eventually invite Mark to sing on the track Elevator, an offer that Mark took, mostly so he wouldn't look like a complete outcast. But the damage was done. He later called the song part of a good record that nearly brought down our band. Tom has since said that he deeply regrets how he handled it all, admitting that he was totally naive about how it would look and how it would make Mark feel. He was so focused on his own artistic trip that he didn't see the personal wreckage he was causing. Boxcar Racer released its self-titled album in May of 2002. It was a creative and critical win, a dark, powerful record that did everything Tom wanted it to do. But it came at a terrible price. The project was supposed to be a temporary escape and permanently poisoned the well. The trust between Tom and Mark was shattered as they got back together to work on the next Blink album. That unresolved tension was soon a ticking time bomb. The first single from the album, I Feel So, ended up peaking at number 8 on the US alternative chart and number 41 in the UK. Tom revealed about the song, it's just a song about feelings. It's really just about being a kid, not really being a kid, but just about being angry at the world, kind of wishing you were a different way. But you can't be a different way, so you feel angry and you feel mad and you feel sad, and that's what's in the song. One more single called There Is was issued, and it peaked at number 32 on the US alternative chart. The album was certified gold in Canada and silver in the UK, and it ended up peaking at number 12 in the States.
Do you care if I don't know what to say?
After the short-lived Boxcar Racer tour wrapped up, Tom officially put the project on ice in 2003, admitting the emotional chaos that it caused. Tom even publicly said that there would never be another Boxcar Racer album because of the tension with Mark. On the surface, problem solved, but the resentment didn't just vanish. It sat there and simmered. When Blink-182 went into the studio to record what would become their 2003 self-titled album, the whole vibe was just off. The easy friendship was gone, replaced by a tense, argumentative energy. But here's the twist. The Boxcar Racer experiment had a huge and complicated influence on this new record. Now that Tom had opened the door to a darker, more experimental sound, he was determined to push Blink in the same direction. He later said the self-titled album was Blink's best record, stating, absolutely because of the Boxcar Racer record. It forced a coming to Jesus moment where the band finally had a real conversation about where they needed to head musically. Tom made it clear he wanted to make more dynamic, emotional music, and this time Mark was more open to the idea. The result was an album that was a massive creative leap. Songs like I Miss You, Feeling This, and Always showed a maturity and complexity that felt worlds away from What's My Age Again. It was layered, ambitious, and many fans consider it their masterpiece. But while the music was getting better, the relationships were getting worse. Making the self-titled album was a battle. The unresolved tension from Boxcar Racer bled into every single decision. Every argument over a lyric or a guitar part was loaded with unspoken feelings and leftover hurt. Mark later confirmed that after Boxcar Racer, the chemistry just wasn't the same. In his memoir, Travis Barker called the whole project dysfunctional, saying Tom was often withdrawn and that things were always tense. The final straw was touring. After years of nonstop recording and promotion, Tom was completely burned out. He wanted to take a long break, at least half a year, to be with his young family. For Mark and Travis, who wanted to keep the band's momentum going, that was way too long. The clash over priorities, the band versus family, became the flashpoint for all that simmering anger. The fights escalated until finally the band broke. In February of 2005, their label released a statement saying Blink-182 was going on indefinite hiatus. Looking back, Tom told MTV News that one of the craziest things about Boxcar Racer was that it was both the greatest and the worst thing for Blink, adding, it was obviously the reason why we made that last record, which I thought was a masterpiece, but it also caused a great division in the band. The breakup was nasty and immediate. Tom didn't waste a second launching his new ambitious project, Angels and Airwaves, which he basically called a continuation of Boxcar Racer. He even wanted to make music that was even more epic and atmospheric, with none of the Blink-182 baggage. Meanwhile, Mark and Travis, feeling abandoned, formed Plus 44. Their first album, When Your Heart Stops Beating, was a direct and often bitter clapback at Tom. The name itself was a reference to the UK dialing code, where they first talked about starting a new band together during Blink's final miserable tour. The raw lyrics on songs like No It Isn't left zero doubt about who they were aimed at. The guys who were once inseparable weren't even speaking. It would take an unimaginable tragedy to even begin to fix the damage that one side project had caused. In the years after the 2005 split, the silence between the members of Blink-182 was deafening. Tom went all in on Angels and Airwaves, chasing his muse through albums, films, and books. Mark and Travis pushed on with Plus 44, channeling their anger and hurt into a darker, more electronic sound. For 3 whole years, Tom and Mark didn't speak a single word to each other, a crazy reality for 2 guys who had once been brothers. That Cold War might have lasted forever if it weren't for a series of absolute tragedies. First, their longtime producer and friend Jerry Finn passed away in August of 2008. Just a month later, Travis Barker was in a horrific plane crash that killed 4 people and left him with third-degree burns over half of his body. Staring down the very real possibility of losing another friend, Tom and Mark rushed to Travis's side. In the face of that tragedy, the years of bitterness finally started to melt away. That shared trauma forced them to reconnect and led to the band's official reunion in 2009. But the healing wasn't all that simple. The reunion was still rocky, and the lingering tension made their very first album back, Neighborhoods, a very difficult and disjointed record to make. The scar left by Boxcar Racer was deep, and the trust that had been broken wasn't easy to rebuild. This tension eventually led to Tom leaving the band for a second time in 2015, this time to dedicate himself to his research into UFOs and his company to the stars. It wasn't until Mark Hoppus' own life-threatening battle with cancer in 2021 that the final walls came crumbling down. When Mark was diagnosed, Tom and Travis were there for him, and the 3 reconnected on a level they hadn't in years, finally talking about their old problems and healing old wounds. This ultimate test of their friendship led to Tom's official and what seems to be permanent return to Blink-182 in 2022. Prior to Tom returning to the group, apparently him and Travis had been working on new Boxcar Racer music. In an interview with Zane Lowe, Travis and Tom confirmed the song ultimately ended up, though, on a Blink-182 record, their latest album 2023's One More Time. The track ended up turning into the song Terrified. Looking back, the Boxcar Racer album is one of the most important and paradoxical parts of Blink-182's story. Tom Delonge himself called it both the best and worst thing for the band. It was the source of a betrayal that nearly ended them for good, but it was also the creative kick they needed to make their most celebrated album and evolve beyond their pop-punk roots. It was a necessary journey for one member that came at the cost of a band's unity. While the album itself is a masterpiece of artistic growth, the story around it is a powerful lesson in friendship, communication, and the damage that can happen when one person's search for freedom leaves their best friends behind. It took nearly 2 decades and multiple near-death experiences to finally repair the damage, which just goes to show you how deep that wound really was. That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Rock Culture Stories. Take care.